what are some of the realities of working as a trader? Is it, what were the highs in your career, and perhaps what were the most memorable lows?
If you cannot feel the stress, it's a bit like F1 car racing, right? Like you cannot have that fear of crashing, otherwise you can't go fast enough. So same way, you cannot have the fear of losing money to be a good trader. Now I put on one of the biggest short positions on Nokia, which basically means that I was betting on the share price going down, but I kept that position on for another year and a half and made 3 times as much money as I did in the first year, because both those companies effectively went to zero and Apple just kept going up exponentially. I think the biggest fear with completely changing my career trajectory was, is it going to work? I was going from earning a very high income to earning zero. So suddenly you start to feel, oh, you know what, I can't afford to lose this job because there is more riding on it.
So Kanishk, thank you so much for joining me today on the Financial Planner Live podcast for this special episode with St. James's Place Academy. So, how are you?
Very well. Thank you for having me. Really looking forward to it.
Excellent stuff. Well, listen, we're really excited to hear about your journey within financial planning, your financial planner life, essentially, and where it all started to where you are now. You're now running a practice, aren't you, of 70 million under management?
Yeah, it's been growing over the years. So yeah, that's where we are now.
Brilliant. So what I'm really excited to hear about is your early career. Okay, I definitely want to hear about that. The transition from finance, trading, into eventually financial planning. So we're going to learn about that. And I also want to hear a little bit more about your upbringing, because, it's not the same as, say, somebody in London. It's very different. So we're going to learn a little bit about your upbringing, what got you into money, okay, whether that's managing it, trading it, or giving financial plans. Is there some historic story behind it? And we're going to find out about that one as well. So I'll tell you what, let's just kick things off from the very start. Why don't you just sort of introduce yourself, your company, and tell us a little bit about your early life.
Yeah, so I'm Kanishk Swarup. We started Compound Wealth Planning about 9 years back now. Prior to this, as you mentioned, I had a career in trading. I was an equity derivatives trader, worked for a few of the global investment banks, and then transitioned into this life now. If I was to take you back to when I started, I suppose my journey started, I was born and brought up in a small town called Jamnagar. It's in the west coast of Gujarat, which is the west coast of India. And to give you a sense of the place, I mean, it had a couple of English medium schools, very limited in terms of opportunity. But my family was based there. I was growing up there. I felt like I was having the best time of my life. Felt like the world is my oyster. But my parents, I suppose, had the foresight to feel like, okay, you know what, if I had to make something of my life, I needed to kind of branch out and go to one of the bigger cities and study there to get and see more opportunities. But I spent 16 years of my initial life there in Jamnagar. And then when I left Jamnagar eventually and tried applying to the bigger schools in the bigger cities like Mumbai and Delhi and Calcutta, what I found was it was very hard to get in. It was quite challenging, having come from this place where they didn't quite recognize the school, they didn't quite recognize the board or what the curriculum, etc. And it was just a flat out rejection. So that was quite hard. Luckily for me, there happened to be a British school offering British A-levels in Calcutta, where mostly it was a very small school where really the children from British consulate or British nationals who were working in India and their children were kind of studying there. And they were quite open-minded. They were like, listen, we don't really care where you've come from. Here's the entrance exam. If you can clear this, then you can do your A-levels here. And I was like, this is my opportunity. So I spent at least a few months just preparing for the entrance exam, managed to clear it. And suddenly I found myself doing British A-levels, having done no O-levels, living far away from my family because they were in Jamnagar. So I was living with my extended family as a house guest. And then I was working while do the schooling for the A levels, and then spend time after hours to do my O levels because it wouldn't make sense otherwise. But long story short, I spent 2 years doing my A levels there, and found that as I was coming towards the end of it, that a lot of my friends were applying to British universities for their undergraduate studies. And having come from a very humble background myself, it felt too much of a stretch for my family to support me and to fund me to send me here. But luckily for me, the application form was very straightforward, and in jest, I said, "Listen, let's just apply and see what happens." And the next thing I know is that I get an offer from London School of Economics to come to the London and study maths and economics. Now, when I shared this with my family, they were very excited, but equally they were very sad that, this is going to be a big stretch for them. So we applied for financial aid, and LSE kind of changed my life when they offered me financial aid to take care of a big portion of the tuition fees, and which allowed me to kind of get on a one-way ticket and come to London.
Wow. What a story.
So it was that was a big break. Because suddenly I've never set foot in this country, came on a one-way ticket, landed and had to take one of the black cabs to my dorm because I knew nothing. And at that time, obviously, we didn't have touch phones and smartphones, etc. This is 2002. That I remember vividly the taxi meter going from 30p, 50p, 70p, and my heart racing faster and faster, just thinking about how expensive it is to just get to my dorm.
Yeah. Well, what an interesting story. So that's kind of, you almost can write that, could you? Like the sense that they, through all that process from a humble background, and all of a sudden sat in the cab, off you go to the LSE, and it's being backed by them as well, right? So they're funding this and helping you with that. How did they support you with it? Did they pay for your dorms? Did they pay for your education? Did you have to work on the side? How did you actually manage that process in that period? Because it's obviously coming from India to England, massively different costs, right?
Massively different costs and massively different culture as well. So I got a complete shock to my system to set foot here. Luckily for me, my parents never made me feel. They basically said that they trusted in me. They said, "You tell us what you need, and we will fund you, and we'll figure it out." But I guess I knew what the situation was. So for me, it was very much about how can I ask for the least amount from my parents. So in that sense, I started working straight away. In fact, I remember even before I arrived like 4 days before the university started. And I remember this was one of these websites which were offering lastminute.com or something. And they were advertising half price deals. And they needed people to stand at Victoria stations, shave off half their hair, and just distribute leaflets. And they were giving £50 for doing that for the day. And at the end of the day, they said, "Well, if you want, we can take off the other half of your hair as well." And I got really excited. I was like, you know what, I have to do this. £50 is a lot of money. And I remember calling my parents and saying, "I'm doing this." And they talked me out of it. They said, "Listen, you haven't even started university. You'll get enough opportunities to earn money. Just settle in." So I did take up a job in my school dorm canteen. So I was working in the kitchen a couple of days a week. I basically worked throughout my university days. I worked part-time. We were allowed 20 hours a week, worked in the library, worked all sorts of odd jobs to take care of my living expenses as much as possible, whilst the university was obviously funding most of the tuition fees.
Fantastic. So tell me a little about how important was that LSE experience? Did it set you up for a future within financial services in the UK?
100%. I think LSE is so business and career oriented. For me, more than the academic side of things, the very first week at LSE during the induction week, I remember the students were talking about, "Hey, listen, how are we going to get work experience to apply for internships in year 2? So to get an internship in year 2, we had to get work experience in year 1, and my peers were already making their CVs and distributing it in shops, etc. So I found myself at the career center in the first week, trying to say, listen, I don't have work X. How do I make a CV? So that, I guess, gives you an idea that how focused LSE was in terms of getting a job at the end of the program, which worked really well for me because that was my focus as well. That how can I repay the investments my parents have made to land a good job. I was always fascinated by finance, and so it felt natural for me to go all in towards focusing on it.
Where do you think that stems from, that fascination of finance? What was your earliest memory of money then?
I remember, like, from a very early age, money was almost part of our daily conversation with my parents. Or we used to live in a joint family. To give you an idea, my dad and his brother, and my grandparents, we all lived in one home. So between my uncle and my dad and my grandfather, they had their own small business. So we would always talk about it openly at meal times, and even between me and my dad, it was always just part of normal conversation. So that's kind of where it started. My grandfather used to invest in equities, so he probably passed that on to my dad, and I got fascinated by the world of stock markets and what stock is and how it works very early on.
Very interesting. So what about this trading route then? So you left LSE, you went into trading. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it was very clear to me that I had to stay back in UK and work. And as I mentioned, finance and equities was something I was really interested in. The trading fascination came, I think it started very early again. One of the things that my dad did with me was we used to play this trading game between us, whereby we, at that time, the stock prices used to be published once a week in a local newspaper. And effectively, it used to be where we would have an imaginary pot of, let's say, 100,000 rupees, and we had to split that into companies that we liked. And my dad would pick some companies, and I would pick some companies, which was like, for example, I remember Cadbury's really well. It was listed at the time, Coca-Cola. And I would pick those companies that I liked, or at least I understood. And that would go into this mock portfolio effectively. And we would track it. We would track it on a week-to-week basis to see how we were doing and compare. And that got me really interested in following how companies work, how do stocks work, how does market events impact it. And the conversations that stemmed from it were very interesting. My mom got looped in as well because she had no interest in the stock market. So we basically made her the benchmark. So she, by default, was invested in the index, the local India stock market index. So we had three of us, and we would see who is doing what and how we are comparing to each other.
Nice. I love it. Nice early memory there.
Yeah.
So how did that compare to actually being a trader?
Yeah, so I guess that got me really interested from a very early age into stocks and stock markets. So when I was applying for graduate roles, that was my big focus area. Joined as I mentioned, did an internship with Credit Suisse, then got offered a full-time role. So I joined them in 2005 as an equity derivatives trader. Suddenly found myself on this big trading floor with 8 screens in front of me, and it's quite daunting and overwhelming to begin with. But luckily, always had a fascination for numbers, and was lucky enough to have some really good bosses who taught me the ropes of it and how to navigate it. So yeah, there were some amazing memories, some great periods of time when I made a lot of money, and equally there were some nightmares, especially the financial crisis, when I remember as if it was yesterday, trading through it, where everybody suffered, including us. But I loved it. I loved every bit of it.
So that financial crisis, you managed to keep your job at that period and trade through it, did you?
Yeah, luckily I managed to keep my job. I did well out of the financial crisis, got promoted. Then that led me to getting a good role at JP Morgan, which was a much bigger mandate, a much bigger bank. So again, that area of responsibility only grew with time. I think the one thing you learn in this job, at least as a trader, is how to not get stressed about the volatility in the markets.
Right.
So I think it really gave me a very good grounding to my new role now as an advisor, because a lot of it is just navigating the turbulence in the markets and guiding your clients. And I think I got a proper 10-year solid day in, day out experience in doing that.
Yeah, so when people think about trading, they see all those different films, don't they? And it's very
Wall Street.
romanticized and it seems very exciting. What are some of the realities of working as a trader? Is it, what were the highs in your career, and perhaps what were the most memorable lows?
I think the way I describe it is and again, it's a big if you cannot feel the stress and if you cannot take it personally and worry too much about, it's a bit like, F1 car racing, right? Like you cannot have that fear of crashing. Otherwise you can't go fast enough.
Mm-hmm.
So same way, you cannot have the fear of losing money to be a good trader. You almost need to have that level of confidence in yourself that you will figure it out. And if there is something that goes wrong, then you will correct it and you will learn from it. And that's taking risk is your job description. So you can't be scared of taking risk, I suppose. As long as you can do that, I think it's the best job in the world. I totally agree with it. But if you can't, and there are, in my experience, I would say most of us can't, right? And it's hard. Then it said the worst job. I mean, the worst can be something, the best way to describe it is, imagine that you're going into an exam for 12 hours a day, and that's the level of stress and anxiety and concentration you need to have, and you do that day in, day out for 365 days a year. So it can, and that's where burnouts happen, right? Because it can be extremely intense, because at any given point of time, you're doing 4 or 5 things. You're looking at the markets, there's your colleagues telling you something, your clients want something else, and you're doing your own thinking about something else. All of this is happening at the same time, which can be very intense and stressful. For me, personally, the first 5 years were amazing because I was single. I had and having come from such a humble background, everything was a positive. Everything was an upside. So for me, I had nothing to lose. And I think that probably made me do my job really well as a trader, if I can reflect back. But in the second half of my trading career, I got married. We wanted to buy a home. We wanted to have children. And suddenly you start to get a bit defensive. Suddenly you start to feel, oh, you know what? I can't afford to lose this job because there is more riding on it. And as soon as you do that, you start to fear losing money. And then it starts to unravel very quickly. So I found myself feeling far more stressed and burnt out over the last few years of my trading career as compared to the first 10.
Yeah, very interesting. You mentioned the word burnout quite a few times. Is it something that you personally have experienced, burnout?
Only in my last couple of years, I think, right? I think in terms of, you asked me what were my best trades, like for example, the financial crisis is a great example where obviously hell was breaking loose around us. And I think at the time, one of my best trades was that Apple had launched the iPhone, and I was mandated to trade the European technology sector, and Nokia was one of the biggest technology companies in Europe. And I put on one of the biggest short positions on Nokia, which basically means that I was betting on the share price going down. And by extension, I put on a short position on BlackBerry because I thought that Apple would completely decimate them. And made a lot of money on that position in 2009. But I kept that position on for another year and a half and made 3 times as much money as I did in the first year, because both those companies effectively went to zero and Apple just kept going up exponentially. So I think the reason I think I got a lot of credit for it within the bank as well is it was an obvious trade because everybody could see the technology difference between Apple and these companies. But the fact that I did not settle by making a little bit of money and I kept that conviction and maxed out the amount of P&L I could make on that trade really paid off.
Wow. That's kind of cool. So how does that make you feel afterwards? Do you feel like you've set the bar really high, and was there an expectation upon yourself to be able to deliver results like that every week?
I think any role, the expectations always keep going up, right? So I think that this was no different. Suddenly the perception of the managers change towards you. They expect a lot more. They expect you to keep coming up with these blockbuster trade ideas all the time. And of course, you start to put on a lot of pressure on yourself, right? Because you want to keep improving and better yourself. And I think all of these things start to take a toll. So, yeah, over the last couple of years, especially, it felt like, you know what, my career or my growth is at the mercy of the stock markets. And I felt at the age of 30 that this is too early a time I don't want to spend the rest of my career being whether success or failure is somewhat in my control, but not entirely in my control. And hence the reason why I started to look at what else could I be doing with all the knowledge and experience that I have accumulated over the years.
Okay, which leads us on to financial planning in St. James's Place. How did that happen?
So a couple of things happened in the run-up to me making this decision, right? I think first of all, I learned the value of money very early on in my life with all the things that I shared with you. To give you another example, like I remember in school, we would do these side hustles, which my parents always encouraged me to do, where, for example, I was selling greeting cards in my school and I was charging them 2 rupees for every card that I would make. Did really well, suddenly collected like 200 rupees and I thought this is the best business in the world, till the time my mom barged in one day extremely upset saying, you know what, we have to pay 500 rupees to buy a new color printer or the cartridge run out, who's been using the printer? And suddenly I realized that my business was bankrupt before it started. So those incidents really made me learn the value of money very early on. Having come from this background, when I started earning in my banking career, my colleagues were thinking about putting down, buying a flashy car, going on big holidays. And I used to be the opposite end, where I used to take a week out of my holidays just to sit at home, just figuring out, how can I use this tax to my advantage? How can I reduce my tax bill? What exemptions and allowances are available to me? And basically started investing my savings from day one. So all my bonus would get invested, and that started to really compound over time. And by the time I was towards the end of my trading career, I could see the big positive impact my savings were having, where they were compounding quite quickly. And that's really made me realize the value of compounding. And then by this time, my colleagues realized what I was doing and they started coming to me. And when we would get our bonus, they would say, hey, Kanishk, you seem to know what you're doing. Can I get 30 minutes of your time? Let's grab a coffee. Just want to get some ideas from you. And that's when I guess the light bulb moment happened, where I felt like these are really successful people. But due to lack of interest or lack of time, they are not able to dedicate the amount of time they should do, in my opinion, to their finances. So maybe I could be doing this. And that's when I started to look for a role as an advisor or as a financial planner. And I started to talk to people and reached out to my mentors and asked them that, hey, listen, you know me really well. What else? How do I get into this space? And that's when I came across St. James's Place. One of my ex-colleagues is a senior partner at St. James's Place. I went to see him, attended one of his seminars, and it just felt like, I could see myself doing this.
I love it. It's another really great example of working in a space where you would assume that people that trade, deal with investments and money, large sums, would know or would have an interest in their own financial planning. It just shows you that these individuals are busy within a space that takes up a lot of time, energy. And do they have the time to look at their own finances? And is financial planning even a thing to traders, bankers? Is it even on their radar? And it just shows you the disciplines, the multiple disciplines that are within financial services. And just because you work within it, and just because you might earn some great money, and you might be really successful in the area and the discipline that you're in, doesn't mean that you know how to build a financial plan, right? And manage it.
Sam, I could not agree more with you. I think this is when I realized that if these people who are in finance and so successful, if they have not even done the basics of financial planning and haven't thought about which trajectory are they on track to achieve the retirement that they want at the time that they want, then surely this is a side effect or a byproduct of you being super successful. Because the more successful you get, the biggest wealth creation or income that you can earn is by doing more of it. So people overinvest and spend more time on their careers and completely end up having close to zero time for their finances. And I think that's when I think this whole delegation and outsourcing of responsibility can make sure that not only are your career income growing and your savings increasing, but the money that you have saved is also growing at an equally fast pace or is working as hard.
Am I right to assume it's a bit like a footballer, right? Like a footballer will earn quite large sums of money if they're a pro footballer at a certain level.
Sure.
but the risk to their career ending sooner is a lot higher. And a lot of them don't really have any idea about managing their finances. They're exposed to levels of income that they probably never thought would ever come. Some come from very humble backgrounds. Just because they've got money doesn't mean that they know how to manage that money, right? And there's a lot of factors at play that will create a risk of opportunity for be bankrupt, which a lot of them end up actually doing, is being bankrupt. And I suppose in a way is similar. You went back to like Formula One race driver and comparing somebody who works as a trader. It's like they could be earning some serious cash. I mean, what was the most you earned in a year as a trader?
So for me, my biggest bonus was about $500,000 in a year.
Yeah, there we go.
This was back when I was in 20s.
In your 20s?
Yeah.
Right? And did you ever think at that point to go and see a financial planner? Or did they ever turn around and say, look, you're earning good money. Maybe you should look after your money. Maybe you should speak to a financial planner. Were you exposed to that or not?
I wasn't exposed to it. And I think even now, I think there's a lack of awareness in general about what financial planners do and what financial planners can do for you. I think there's a long way to go. I think everybody realizes, for example, that if you fall ill, you need to go to a doctor. Or if you're not fit, you need to you get a coach for yourself. But I think for finances, it almost seems still feels to me like a nice to have, or something which is only for the ultra wealthy people, which is not the case. So this is like 15 years after when I was in that position. So back then, I think even less so was this awareness around the idea of financial planners. And unfortunately, whoever did exist at the time, let's say when I would reach out to my bank, for example, and ask them if they could help, they were unfortunately, if I may say so with all due respect, glorified salespeople, where they were kind of only focusing on their agenda rather than giving me a holistic guidance on what I should be doing.
So you saw an opportunity. And again, it's leaning into your background. It's leaning into what you know. You've done the job. You've gone through the emotions of being that person. You've earned the big levels of income. And I mean, like you shared with me a couple of weeks ago, like I think it's your 30th birthday, bawling into the office with a cake.
Yeah,
they sacked you on the day, didn't they? You said it can be up and down environment.
This is it, right? Like it can be, you just don't know what's around the corner. So this as I shared with you, I had no inkling of this. On my 30th birthday, walk into my office with cupcakes. And I'm flying out for a holiday. At the end of the day, 8:30, I get a call we have this big dealer boards, and you could see HR and I mean, because you've seen this to happen to your colleagues so many times, especially during the financial crisis, that's not a good sign. That's something's gone wrong. Anyways, you walk up, you go to the meeting room, you get invited to a meeting room, you walk into this meeting room, your boss is sitting there, the HR person sitting there, and you're like, we need to let you go. And it wasn't due to my performance, or it wasn't due to, otherwise I would have known if it was to do with my, that I made a big loss or anything like that. It was basically, banking is like that. It's just volatile. And they were reducing headcount, and unfortunately they were told to reduce the trading desk. And I was one of the last people to have joined JP Morgan since before this happened, and last in, first out. And unfortunately it was me. So that just shows you how volatile it can be. And and this probably stresses the importance that nobody knows what's around the corner, irrespective of the role you're in. And you almost need the two pillars of your finances to go hand in hand. On one hand, it is the income that you're earning, what you're spending, and what you're saving. But equally important is what you're doing with those savings. And if you don't pay attention to this second pillar, then guess what? You'll have to keep working till perpetuity. The earlier you can make this second pillar as strong as possible, at some point, the second pillar, which is your finances, will take over most of the weight, and you can then relax and best case scenario completely let go or for having to work for money and earn a passive income through your savings and through your investments.
I love it. So you started helping people within the business because you showed an interest within your own financial planning. You then externally looked around and St. James's Place came out. What was your entry point into St. James's Place?
So I had a very pleasant experience meeting the people at St. James's Place. As I mentioned, one of my senior ex-colleagues is a senior partner there. And I also, because I had worked for Credit Suisse, I met with the Credit Suisse Private Wealth, some of the other peers and other wealth management companies. And I just loved the idea that I could build a business within St. James's Place, which I could call my own. I could do the things I want to do for my clients. And yet they were there to provide the guardrails to keep me safe, to keep my clients safe. And that middle ground between being just a salaried employee, trying to meet sales targets, and being completely left on my own without any guidance in this heavily regulated industry was the perfect fit for me. So I joined the ASJP, the academy as they call it, it's going back 10 years now. And that's how I got started.
Fantastic. So what was the biggest fear for you leaving trading, leaving banking, and then going into St. James's Place? So was there a fear associated to it? How did you overcome that fear? And then I want you to tell me what the first couple of years were like.
Yeah, I think the biggest fear with completely changing my career trajectory was, is it going to work? I was going from earning a very high income to earning zero. So that was a big decision that I think my wife has always been extremely supportive. My parents, they were all like, listen, if you think it's the right thing for you to do, then just do it. And I did check with a lot of my friends to see whether this was going to be a good idea. And the collective feedback I got was, I think it's a risk or an investment worth making. And that's how I kind of jumped into it. But that was by far the biggest risk. In terms of how the first few years went, it was tough. Definitely, people I thought would automatically and naturally become clients did not. People I had no expectations would ever become a client became a client. So I think I would just call it a complete emotional roller coaster where you would go from 1 week to feeling like, yes, there's proof of concept. People trust me. They're happy to give me a chance to what am I doing? Why did I make this turnaround? Why did I make this change? So I would question it. I was probably questioning it every couple of days in the first 6 months, probably every week in the first year. Second year got a bit better. I was probably questioning it once a month. And I think it probably took me 3+ years to feel like, yes, you know what, this is going to work out.
Yeah. It is very, very common that I hear that. Year 1, year 2, really tough. Year 3, start to feel a little bit more comfortable. And I think it's reassuring when people listening to this, if they are struggling within that first couple of years, it's normal. It's tough, it's hard, and you probably question yourself a lot. And it's usually within those periods that people pull away and they've just got to push through that pain barrier and that the rewards will start to come. I mean, you've built now a business in that 9-year period. It's got 70 million under management. So you must be doing something right. So let's just talk a little bit about what you are doing that you feel that's right, that we could just sort of help educate others who are maybe on the same path as to maybe they should have a go at that angle to be able to either help them attract clients, retain clients, introducers, and help push the business forward. So what are some of the things that you do that you feel that really move the needle?
If I may say, I think it's just focusing on the basics and doing them extremely well. I think in today's day and age, knowledge is literally free, right? Like with AI, there is insane amount of information about everything. And one can feel very overwhelmed about what am I supposed to concentrate on. So what I mean by that is what we do really well is ultimately we want to become, every single interaction I have with a client or a prospective client is, how can I become that one person or a partner in their lives where they can come to me for any money matters? Simple. Now, either I will be able to help them directly with my own knowledge, expertise, and my advice, or I should be able to guide them in the right direction and win their trust that they feel comfortable enough to share anything with me. So I think when you start with that single point agenda, then you are almost free to just selflessly or 100% only focus on how can I add value to that person in front of me. And that can happen in many different ways. Obviously, financial planning, cash flow modeling, there is products, etc., that we talk to our clients about. But it can go beyond that as well, right? There's a whole emotional piece to it where you become that first point of contact for big life events. When a client when a client of mine wants to buy a house, or when something is happening in their personal lives, which is disturbing, career transitions, you become that one person where, like, okay, let's take stock of things. And my job is to kind of take their thoughts, their concerns, their questions, and demystify them. Make it easy for them to understand or give them a structure on how they should be thinking about those things. So a lot of my job is also coaching. It's not just financial advice or very prescriptive that, hey, listen, thank you for coming to me. Here's a list of 7 things you need to do. Off you go. It's very much around, let me give you a framework on how to think about these things so that you can come to the right answers yourself. And that becomes very valuable to the clients that I work with, where you are guiding them and just making things easy to understand, giving them a structure, giving them a list of things that they can work one by one so that they don't feel overwhelmed about whatever is happening.
So when it comes to talent, when it comes to, client attraction, what do you think worked best for you? When did you start to notice some patterns? Because you said in the beginning it was quite difficult because you thought the people that would come over and see you and use you didn't.
Yeah.
So what did you do to start to really change the way you approached client attraction? What started working and when and how?
I think, and this goes back to your earlier question as well about what is key is when you're starting off is you don't have any money coming in and you're really anxious, is you need to have a long-term vision.
Yeah.
As a founder, as a starting a new business, you cannot go in expecting that in 6 months suddenly everything will be great. You need to kind of mentally, emotionally, financially, within your family, give yourself that 3-year plus runway to make this work, so that you're not questioning whether this is going to work or not in the early days or in the early months. And the same approach applies with clients, where I take a lifelong vision when I take on a client. When I take on a client, my idea is how can I see myself hopefully working together for the rest of our lives. And when you take a long-term approach, then it makes it very easy for you to, as I said, just focus on adding value, because everything else kind of takes care of itself. And for me, I think the pattern I started to see was these clients starting to trust me and then introducing me to their friends and family. So to answer your question, I think introductions and referrals is what I rely on for finding new like-minded people to work with. But that takes a lot of time to build that trust and confidence to be able to get that.
What about giving back? Has that ever been part of your strategy, sort of leaning into helping others without financial gain?
It does. It plays a big part, actually. When I was in university, there was a charity it's called SEO. It helps children and students from ethnic minorities get into roles and industries like banking and law, etc. And they help me with some of the interviewing skills and things like that to help me secure an internship when I was a student. So what we do now for them is, in the spirit of giving back, we hold webinars and workshops for them where we go in and talk about money matters. So, for example, recently we did something where we were talking to first-year graduates. So they are working for the first time in a high-paying role. And as you mentioned, they have not seen this kind of money. And it is very easy in those early years to get distracted and start to really amp up your lifestyle without thinking about the future. So it's a lot about educating them that, how to value money, because it's so easy to increase your lifestyle. I mean, a simple example could be once you start traveling business class, you can never dial back to economy. And in my own family, I can give you an example where 3 years back we got a really good deal. We thought, okay, you know what, it's costing us the same. Let's go to this 7-star resort. Had a great time. Come next year, we go to a normal resort, still amazing, but not at that 7-star level. And my 5-6-year-old daughter at the time was like, Dad, this is amazing, but you know what? It's not as good as the last one. And you can see this, right?
Yeah.
And we were feeling the same thing, but we didn't say it. But now everything is benchmarked to that resort. So it's very, I mean, if I could share this, you'd be super careful about increasing your lifestyle.
Lifestyle creep.
If you can sustain it for the rest of your life, then do it. If not, think twice.
Lifestyle creep. You see that? I'm in Dubai.
Yeah.
So you can imagine out there.
Yes, it must be much harder there.
It creeps up. Lifestyle creep, they call it. And before you know it, you're spending ridiculous money on things that you didn't have when you were in the UK. And you become used to it. And people end up with outgoings that are astronomical.
Yeah.
I've had to really work on that being in Dubai. It's not something that I've fallen into, really, the lifestyle creep. I don't have the maid. I don't have all the things that a lot of people do have. I chose not to, really.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really want to fall into to that trap. I haven't rushed out and bought like a really expensive car. I didn't buy a load of furniture and all of that. I know people have gone out there and kitted up their houses and spent loads of money and like bought property, whatever, and they're back again in the UK in 12 months' time. So you never quite know. And I've seen the lifestyle creep happen with people, and you're going out to clubs, you're going out to beach clubs, you're paying 150 quid to get in, it's 15 quid a drink, and people start doing that all the time on a regular basis.
And you extrapolate your income that is going to last forever.
Yeah.
And you always like, that's fine, in 3 years I can afford it. And
it's even more dangerous because it's kind of it's like holiday mode as well, isn't it?
Correct.
People think you're on holiday. So yeah, it was a weird one. It kind of, I battled it really hard.
Yeah.
I'm kind of glad in a way that I haven't fallen into that trap as much, but it definitely creeped up. There were areas where it definitely creeped up for a period of time.
It happens subconsciously, isn't it?
Exactly. Right. So when we look at the success you've had, obviously, at St. James's Place, let's just talk and finish up on where do you think the partnership has supported you in your journey and in your development of running your business?
I think when I started Compound Wealth Planning, I felt like I had the market experience. We spoke about that. I felt like I know how to make a financial plan for my clients. But what I didn't know is how to speak with clients. I'd never been in a client-facing role or where I was in a relationship role. I was just used to being in front of 8 computer screens. So I felt that St. James's Place has a very, very holistic training program or a coaching program where it was a lot of focus was on soft skills as well, about how to ask the right questions, how to go beyond just the script to get a full understanding of the client's position to be able to guide them. And of course, the extent of support that is available within a large organization like that is hugely valuable. The fact that irrespective of whether I have personally dealt with a particular scenario before, there are experts in every area of financial planning. It could be trusts, it could be inheritance, it could be long-term care. And the ability to just pick up the phone and have that level of expertise and experience available on tap, to me, my practice is hugely valuable because I know that when I'm giving an advice to a client, they're not just dependent on my knowledge and experience. They are benefiting from the collective experience of St. James's Place over 30 years, over 5,000 practices, which is insanely valuable.
Nice. Great stuff. And what about scaling your business and building it? Have you employed anybody, are you ambitious to grow the partner practice into a business that will hire advisors or power planners or administrators? Are you part of that?
Yeah, I
growth?
think I want to scale. I want to grow my practice because I feel I want to help more people. And I think it is such an underutilized area of where I feel there is so much more I can give. And obviously, due to constraints of time, I think the only way to do it is if I have more advisors who share the same philosophy and approach things the same way to be able to help as many people. So our practice has grown. My practice now has got 2 other advisors. We've got an operations manager. We use a company for outsourcing a lot of the para planning and the admin support. And yeah, the dream is to keep growing, but not measure ourselves just in terms of funds under management or number of advisors or number of clients. I think what is really important to me is how we measure what value we are adding to our clients. So whether it is through a year-end survey or through the satisfaction score, we want to be able to make a difference. We want to be able to be seen where clients come back and say, you know what, having you in our life has made a positive impact. To us, that's the holy grail.
I love it. Well, Kanishk, look, thanks so much for sharing your career journey today. I think it's really inspiring to hear somebody that's worked in the high pressure environment of trading and being able to come out of it in a way that they have transitioned into a role that adds value to themselves, but also to those that he used to work with as well. And I think anybody that's working within trading and thinking about life after trading, right? Because it sounds like it does have a bit of a shelf life.
Yeah, 100%.
That financial planning is something to definitely consider as a career. So thanks for sharing that journey. It sounds like it's worked out for you. And obviously we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, Sam. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Cheers.
Thank you.